Good evening, everybody. Welcome to a Wednesday night episode of Top Shelf Teaching, where good books are lit. Um, Thanks for coming out and talking to us tonight, participating in our literary discussion about whatever suits us. Look, the date is January 7th. We're going to be commemorating the passing of one of music's great personalities, heavy metal music in particular, one Neil Peart, former drummer of the rock band Rush. Now, I say former because, as you may have heard, it's been all over the news recently that the band is getting back together. They're having a tour starting this year sometime in May, I believe. They'll be making the rounds with a new drummer. Um, Still not quite sure how I feel about that. Um, on one hand, I think it's great that people get to enjoy the music again. But, the question is, will it be the same? Um, Not quite sure, and kind of having my doubts about it. So um, we'll see what happens. Other than that, pretty quiet Wednesday night here in North Carolina. It's just after 8, just before 8 p.m. Eastern time. The weather was very nice here today, sunny and 70 degrees. Going to be like that for the next 3 or 4 days before it takes a plunge first of next week or so. So hope things are okay where you guys are. There's some snow in the offing in the northeast first of next week, I think I heard. So everybody stay safe out there. Um, if you have any questions, I can take those in the chat over here um, to the right. I'll be keeping an eye on that. If you have any questions, drop them in there. Um, as always, the podcast can be reached by email at topshelfteachings with an S at gmail.com. Drop me a line, say, hey, what's going on? Suggest a book, suggest a topic of conversation, and we'll get on it. So that's that. Let me know what's going on out there. Anybody? So, in the regular podcast, we are working our way through the novel The Great Gatsby. We'll do chapter 3 on that on Monday. It'll drop on Monday. We'll record it before then. So I hope you're following along with those. And we'll do what we can to keep that discussion lively. And hope you're enjoying those podcasts. I know there's been some interaction with those. Great books are usually our topic. And tonight we'll be taking a dive into some other types of literature. Let's see, what year did this come out? In addition to being a daggone good rock drummer, Neil Peart also famously was the band's lyricist for his time with the band. In the year, what year did he write this thing? Fourth printing, ECW Press. 2002. He put out this book. It's called Ghost Rider. Ghost Rider Travels on the Healing Road. This is kind of a pivotal period in the band's history. In the space of not very long, Neil lost his daughter and his wife, um, um, in a kind of a tragic series of events. And it wasn't known for a long time, around the turn of the century, in the early aughts, whether there was even going to be a Rush um, band. Were they going to tour? Were they going to do records? They kind of had an off period while Neil kind of got his life together. Um, it wasn't for sure. In fact, I think the other members of the band have been pretty public about having that very question. They were very conscious of like letting him kind of do his thing and get things together. And during that period of time while he was getting that together, he also got on his motorcycle and rode for a long time around many places and saw many things from his BMW motorcycle. Over the course of 14 months, it says he rode 55,000 miles in search of, this is the book jacket I'm reading from, in search of a reason to live. On a journey of escape, exile, and exploration, he traveled from Quebec to Alaska, down the Canadian and American coasts and western regions to Mexico and Belize, and finally back to Quebec. Recorded journals about his progress and setbacks on the grieving, healing process, and the pain of constantly reliving his losses. It's a good read if you're into such a thing. It's interesting in that he was famously a very private individual, and he was very public about being private. The song from one of the early albums, Moving Pictures, the song called Limelight, in which he talks about the tribulations of being a private person, doing a very public job. He never wasn't much for interviews. You never saw him around doing magazine spreads. He was just a very private guy. And the song Limelight, has within it kind of a graphic description of what it's like to be a private person out there. And the line that always jumped out to me was, I can't pretend a stranger is a long-awaited friend. Backstage or what have you. He just wasn't as public about things as his bandmates. So the fact that this very intensely private person writes a book like this was very surprising to me, and probably other people as well. So I'd like to read a part of that to you here for just a little bit. The book is inscribed with a lyric from a 1984 album that they put out called After Image that starts off with the line, "Suddenly you were gone from all the lives you left your mark upon." So, he's writing that about his wife and his daughter, and, I saw that line a lot in posts relating to Neil's passing in 2020. Anyway, so here's how the book starts out. Outside the house by the lake, the heavy rain seemed to hold down the darkness, grudging the slow fade from black to blue to gray. As I prepared that last breakfast at home, squeezing the oranges, boiling the eggs, smelling the toast and coffee, I looked out the kitchen window at the dim Quebec woods, gradually coming into focus. Near the end of a wet summer, the spruce, birch, poplars, and cedars were densely green and glossy and dripping. For this momentous departure, I had hoped for a better omen than this cold, dark, rainy morning, but it did have a certain pathetic fallacy, a sympathy with my interior weather. In any case, the weather didn't matter. I was going. I still didn't know where: Alaska, Mexico, Patagonia, or for how long? 2 months, 4 months, a year? But I knew I had to go. My life depended on it. Sipping the last cup of coffee, I wrestled into my leathers pulling on my boots, and then rinsed the cup in the sink and picked up the red helmet. I pushed it down over the thin balaclava, tightened the plastic rain suit around my neck, and pulled on my thick waterproof gloves. I knew this was going to be a cold, wet ride, and if my brain wasn't ready for it, at least my body would be prepared. That much I could manage. The house on the lake had been my sanctuary, the only place I still loved, the only thing I had left, and I was tearing myself away from it, unwillingly but desperately. I didn't expect to be back for a while, and one dark corner of my mind feared that I might never go back home again. That this would be a perilous journey, and it might end badly. And at this point in my life, I knew that things could happen, even to me. I had no definite plans, no vague notion to head north along the Ottawa River and then turn west, maybe across Canada to Vancouver to visit my brother Danny and his family. Or I might head northwest through the Yukon and Northwest Territories to Alaska, where I have never traveled, but then catch the ferry down the coast of British Columbia toward Vancouver. Knowing the ferry would be booked up long in advance, it was the one reservation I dared to make. And as I prepared to set out on the dark, rainy morning, August 20th, 1998, I had 2.5 weeks to get to Haines, Alaska, all the while knowing that it didn't really matter to me or anybody else if I kept that reservation. Out in the driveway, the red motorcycle sat on its center stand, beaded with raindrops and gleaming from my careful preparation. The engine was warming on fast idle, and the plume of white vapor jetted out behind its steady hum, muffled by my earplugs and helmet. I locked the door without looking back, and standing by the bike, I checked the load one more time, adjusted the rain covers and the shock cords, and the proverbial deep breath gave me the illusion of commitment to the day and to the journey, and I put my left boot in the foot peg, swung my right leg over with the heavily laden bike, and settled into the familiar saddle. My well-traveled BMW R1100 GS, the adventure touring model, was packed with everything I might need for a trip of unknown duration to unknown destinations. 2 hard-shell luggage cases flanked the rear wheel, and while behind the saddle I had stacked a duffel bag, a tent, a sleeping bag, inflatable foam pad, ground sheet, toolkit, and a small red plastic gas can. I wanted to be prepared for anything, anywhere. But sometimes I like to travel faster than the posted speed limits, especially for the wide open roads of the West, where it was safe in terms of viable risks and dangerous in terms of hidden enforcement. I had tried to use a small radar detector, which I tucked into my jacket pocket with its earpiece inside the helmet. A few other necessities, additional tools, and my little belt pack filled the tank bag in front of me, and a road map faced up from a clear plastic cover on top. The rest of the baggage I would carry with me that morning had less bulk but more weight, the invisible burdens that had driven me to depart what already seemed like a life of exile. But at that moment, before I turned to wheel or even pushed off the center stand, I reaped the first reward of this journey when my thoughts and energies contracted and narrowed their focus to riding the machine. My right hand gently rolled the throttle a little more, left hand wiped away the raindrops already collecting on my face shield, and then pulled the clutch lever. My left foot toed the shifter down on the first gear and slowly moved up the lane between the wet trees. At the top, I paused to lock the gate behind me, wiped my face shield again, and rode out into the muddy gravel road away from all that. Just over a year before that morning, on the night of August 10th, 1997, a police car had driven down that same driveway to bring us news of the first tragedy. That morning, my wife Jackie and I had kissed and hugged our 19-year-old daughter Selena as she set to drive back to Toronto, all ready to start university that September. As night came on, the hours passed, and we would have heard from her, and Jackie became increasingly worried. An incorrigible optimist, back then at least, I still didn't believe in the possibility of anything bad happening to Selena or any of us. And I was sure it was just teenage thoughtlessness. She would call. There would be some excuse. When I saw headlights coming down the driveway to where the house lights showed the markings of a police car, I remembered the previous summer when the provincial police came to ask about a robbery down the road. And I thought it would be something like that. A mother has a certain built-in radar detector, however. And that moment I noticed that it was the police, I saw Jackie's eyes go wide and her face turn white. She knew. Instinctively, I took her hands and we went to the driveway to face the local police chief, Ernie Woods. He led us inside and showed us the facts he'd received from the Ontario Provincial Police. And we tried to take in his words. Bad news. Maybe you'd better sit down. And we tried to read the black lines in the paper and tried to make sense of the incomprehensible, to believe the unacceptable. My mind was reeling in a hopeless struggle to absorb those words. Single car accident. A parent lay lost control, dead at the scene. No, Jackie breathed, then louder, no again and again, as she collapsed on the floor in the front hall. At first I stood there paralyzed with horror and shock, but then, when I saw Jackie start to get up and I felt afraid of what she might do, I fell down beside her and held her. She struggled against me and told me to let her go, but I wouldn't. Our big white Samoyed, Nick, was frightened and confused by all this, and he barked frantically and tried to push between us. Chief Ernie was afraid to touch the dog. I wouldn't let go of Jackie, and Nicky was trying to protect somebody to make us stop this. So it was pandemonium. The two of us kicked and yelled at him while shrill barks echoed throughout the house. I held on to Jackie, and she was overcome by the numbing protection of shock and asked Chief Ernie to call our local doctor. Time was all meaningless now, but at some point Nicky crept away to hide somewhere, and Dr. Spunt came and tried to say some comforting things, but we were unreceptive. Sometime later, Chief Ernie left, then Dr. Spunt too, and for the rest of the night I walked endlessly around the living room carpet. What I learned later is called search mode, in which I was unconsciously trying to find someone who was lost, just as some animals and birds do. While Jackie sat and I stared into space, neither of us saying anything. In the gray twilight of morning, we put the downcast Nicky in the car and headed for Toronto, driving through the rain to face the end of the world. So it goes on from there. It's a long road that he's on, and we know that it leads back to his life and back to his band, who he performed alongside with for many years, until he was taken from us prematurely with brain cancer. So that's the story from the book. He wrote another nonfiction book about his experiences on the road, of which there was many, because the band was out there touring for better part of 50 years before Neil passed. And as like we said, the legend continues. They'll be back out there this summer for the R50 tour, and we'll see how that's received from people. So anyway, that is our Wednesday night edition of Top Shelf Teachings. We'll be back on, let's see, Tuesday, Wednesday. We'll be back on Friday for another live drop-in, another rock and roll occasion, and we'll talk some more about that then. The regular edition of the podcast will be back on Monday, when we will talk about Chapter 2 of The Great Gatsby, which is the novel that we're working our way through. 9 chapters in all. So as the weeks go by, we'll talk about the novel and talk about some assignments for you teachers and study materials for you students. So drop me a line. Let me know how you like the show. Click like and subscribe, as they say. And we look forward to hearing your feedback. So that's it for tonight. We'll see you on Friday. Everybody enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll talk soon. Good night.